Hello, besties. Hello, hello, hello. Wait, let me get my shirt unbunched for you. Cause I'm all the way in the couch, y'all. I'm all the way in the couch. I am deep in the couch. Hello, besties. It is Wine Down Wednesday. This I know you're not supposed to put ice in wine, but this is a spritzer because I still need to keep my wits about me. Hello. Oh, Miss Cassandra's waiting to get in. Hi, Yvette. Ooh, so strange. I think that's what your name says, and I love that. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Hey. Let's get started. If you do not know me, my name is Orion Brown. I am the founder and CEO of Black Travel Box. We're a personal care products company for travelers of color, and this is Wind Down Wednesday. Miss Cassandra, hey.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing? Now, I just got a new setup, you guys. Don't laugh at me. I got one of those like Amazon. It's got like the snake arms and like different lights and all of this stuff. So now it clips to my thing. My phone sits in it. Everything's plugged in. So if it falls off, don't laugh at me, y'all. Be my friends and be
I
like,
can't
"Oh,
promise.
girl."
I can't promise.
All right, I'm gonna scoot this back a little bit. Let's see. I think that's a good. My head is big, y'all. Again, don't make fun of me because I got all the big old head. Hello, hello. So we got some folks hanging out with us. I'm so glad y'all came. It's Wind Down Wednesday. We have made it through a whole half of another week. Well, we made a whole week since the last time we drank together, y'all. So I am so here for it. I'm really excited because once again, we get to come together and we get to talk about travel. We get to talk about beauty. We get to talk about whatever comes our way. So definitely hit us up in the comments. And then I want to introduce our guest, Cassandra, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself to everybody. And I would love for you to tell us who you are, where you live, where you're from, if those are different places, and how many stamps do you have on your passport?
Woo!
It doesn't have to be the exact number. I've had people like go full on matrix on me and they're like
Yeah.
carrying the one and I'm like, don't do
I'm
that, don't do
literally
that.
trying to
It's
calculate right now.
we're just trying to get a sense of how many places you have been.
Mhm.
So yes, without further ado, Miss Cassandra.
Hi, I'm Cassandra, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And when I was told, that I'd be a quote unquote special guest, especially in regards to traveling, I'm like, thank goodness, because I miss traveling so much. So unfortunately, I always say this, I work in corporate America, so it's not that exciting. I work in finance. So what I do to offset that sort of, stodgy, occupation is traveling a lot. So in terms of, I live in Forest Hills, Queens, New York. My family's originally from Haiti, so had, I spent my youth in Haiti, and then,
Ooh.
of course, I'm a native New Yorker. And in terms of stamps on my passport, I would definitely say over 40.
Ooh,
Yeah, I
yes.
had the luxury, I will say, for 9 years, I worked for a Swiss company. So that, allowed me to live in Zurich for a little bit. And, once you're in Europe, you can travel, to another country. It's like me in New York going to Jersey. It's literally that.
Right? Well, I mean, Jersey is another country.
Pretty much, pretty much. Yeah.
I love that. And you know what? I spent 15 years in corporate.
Okay.
And that was exactly like when I talk about travel is my self-care, that's what got me through corporate without ending up on the 9 o'clock news,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
there's moments. So I love that, and I can totally relate to it. And I love that you're from Haiti. Oh, girl,
Yeah.
I know there's a whole bunch of stuff going on down there,
A lot of stuff.
but I
Yeah.
just want to see more and more of us when we can go to Haiti, spend our money there, and hang out with people that look like us.
And I think the thing with Haiti is it's such a beautiful country, but you'll never know it based on the images you see on TV,
Yeah.
right? Fortunately, Haiti has become this sort of like donation country where the
Yeah,
more
some white lady giving
desperate you
us money
see,
to little kids with flies on their face. I mean,
exactly. So they kind of depend on that. But in actuality, when you go to Haiti, there's a nightlife, there's beautiful beaches, you could do yoga, sushi, jazz clubs, and stuff like that. But they're not going to advertise that, right?
yeah.
Tons of hotels, and everyone that I know, even non Haitians that have gone to Haiti, love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
So
know what? So to be fair, for folks that are like, everything isn't about race. Everything isn't, although this country is, a lot of it is predicated on it, and even in places that we don't even recognize. But that being said, when I went to Cuba, and I thought Cuba
I went
was
twice.
backwards. Like before I went, I was like, they're backwards. They don't have power. They don't know what's going on. And then I got there and I was like, oh right, because the U.S. isn't the only power in the world, right? And
Yeah.
so when we embargoed Cuba, as a country and as a government, we kind of created this narrative around Cuba being this backward place, that they're driving these old cars because they haven't had a new car there. I'm like, it's
Yeah,
Peugeots and all
exactly.
kinds of stuff all over Cuba.
Hmm.
And it's because they've been kicking it with Canadians and Russians and everybody else who could
Hmm.
freely go there. And so it's not a backwards place. Yes, there is poverty, but honestly, I dare y'all to come to any major city in
Yeah.
the United States and
Hmm.
go to the sketchy areas and not see poverty.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm obsessed, and Haiti is definitely on my list.
So I'm gonna have to echo what you're saying about Cuba because for the longest I've wanted to go to Cuba for the longest, but coming from Haiti, I kind of knew that it wasn't what was pictured, right?
Mm.
So and I just love Cuban music. So when I got to go in 2015, it was I mean, I wasn't really surprised because I had educated myself so much about it and I was just happy to be there,
Wait, when
so
did you go in 2015? Because I was there fall 2015.
December
Oh
2015.
my gosh, it was right before you. I was there
I
like
went to the
October,
Louisiana
November.
Jazz Festival, so I'm a big jazz head. So I went 2 years in a row. I went to Jazz Festival 2016 as well. Mhm.
Ooh, so it's in December every year.
Yes, but now they moved it to January because it was like right before Christmas, a week before Christmas. So they changed it. So now it's in January.
We want that. You sick of your family, come on ahead and go on vacation money. That's what that is. And I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. That is awesome.
That's
Well,
probably
tell
one
me
of my
about that.
favorite
Like,
trips.
tell me about like, because there's this interesting thing that I've noticed. And my ex-husband was Caribbean. He's Jamaican.
Mhm.
And there was like this sort of like, why would I go to any other island? Because my home is dope, which I totally get. That
Yeah.
totally makes sense to me.
Mhm.
So what was it? What made you go to Cuba? And what was it like to experience and like sort of compare and contrast that with your Haitian background?
Well, that's the thing. Comparing it, I just felt like I was at home. So, what you don't know, well, probably you know because you were married to a Caribbean, we all pretty much have the same sort of culture. It's just how we interpret it. But I would say Cuba
Mm-hmm.
is the closest to Haitian culture. Also, there's a large population of Haitians in
Mm.
Cuba. And also, Cubans, really look up to Haiti because Haiti helped them get independence. So going through the museums or just walking around, you see homages to Haitian generals that helped, and anyone that I spoke to, they just really reveled in it. In terms of the food, I think because of the lack of, I guess, supplies, it's not as spicy as ours. Ours is extremely flavorful and very hot. But in terms of rice and beans and plantains, it's all in the same. But in terms of, I was just happy to be there because I dreamt about it for so long, right? So I just soaked it in everything, and I did everything. So it was just a dream come true, to be honest. And I have to say that is probably my favorite country out of everywhere that I've visited.
And you've been like 40, so that's pretty impressive, right? In very, very different places. So
Feel
tell us
comfortable. Mhm.
and I feel you on the food, because I think, especially in the States, we have this idea that anything that is quote unquote Hispanic or Latino is like this, is spicy. And it's really just us liking Mexican food. Let's be honest. I mean, because it isn't, right? And Cuba is one of those islands that didn't, if you go back to the agriculture, they actually didn't grow hot peppers there. So they're like, why would I
Mhm.
make that hot? Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Y'all are out of control. And so that was a surprise to me. Although I will say, I noticed personally the food got more flavorful outside of Havana. So like when you go into the
Yeah.
countryside, it
Yes.
got more flavorful.
Hmm.
Which to me is just, I think, and this is my hypothesis, it may not be true, but I just think that's like anytime you go to a place that's very touristy,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to like make the food more palatable for more people.
Absolutely.
But girl, that food was good out in the country though.
It was, I mean, the food was good, but it's just kind of like, I'm patient. So like spices, I understood, but I loved it. I just relished in the culture, in the music. So I'm a big like jazz fan and definitely a huge Cuban music fan. So that alone, in terms of listening to the music live and, dancing, salsa. So that's why it's my favorite, because I just felt more at home and I was just welcomed with open arms, right? And maybe it's because they hadn't seen American tourists as much as all the others, so they just really made me feel at home.
Did you go with a group or did you go solo?
I went with, well, I think you have to go with a group. So
Oh, you did the
yeah, unless you go through Canada, of course. So I went with a group, and we were just a group of 10, small group. And till this day, 5 of us are still friends 6 years later.
So you hadn't met each other before you went.
Nope.
So I mean, it's so to some extent it's a solo trip, but you have the benefit of a group that like gives you safety and other things. Yeah. But it wasn't like you went with like 5 of your friends. It was like,
no, I was supposed to go with my cousin, and she backed out at the last minute. And
don't they do that mess?
Pissed.
They do that mess.
So pissed. But then when I got there, I was like, oh. But then it just became just one whole family, and I'm so happy my cousin didn't come, actually, because she's just rah, 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 and I think she would have kind of hindered my bonding with the people.
Yeah.
So it kind of worked in our benefit. Until this day, 6 years, we're still together. Like, we are all friends.
I love that. And you made a really interesting point, because when we go places that are familiar to us with people that are familiar to us, in general, the tendency is to want to stick with your people. Mm-hmm. But when you don't have your people, you stick with the people that you meet. And it's a great opportunity to meet new people, to create new connections with folks that may or may not be anything like you.
True. And four other people were by themselves as well. So we just kind of blended. Right after the airport, we had lunch, and then all of a sudden, we told our story, and I told about my cousin, and everybody's like, well, I'm here alone. And then it was just,
well, I'll be your cousin, I got you. That is awesome. So where did you guys end up going? Like, what, do you recall your itinerary?
Okay, so are you familiar with Shabi?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I went through her travel agency, Cultural Island Travel, and she has her partner down there, Patricia, who's an American, but she's been living in Cuba forever. So basically, it wasn't a typical tourist tour. It was like you went to visit somebody that lived there. So
I love that.
Bus. It was it was like this mini bus, and Patricia was like the queen of Havana, so she got us in every club and everything else. So she just took us to friends who knew about the country, knew about the city. We did an architectural tour, which was fantastic. Now remember, our nights were already planned with a jazz festival. So it was pretty much get up early in the morning, do as much as you can, and then at night our agenda was already booked. But I would say the best place was after our architectural tour, she goes, I have a surprise for you. We're like, okay, we're going into this sort of very rundown neighborhood, but it's Cuba, right? And then we park in front of this just house, and she goes, go on in. And we walk in, and basically into somebody's house, and it happens to be this house where every Saturday night people come to dance. Okay,
I love that. Oh my God, I love that.
And you had like all these octogenarians who came there and dance, and the history.
Wait, so time out for those of y'all who are like, I've never heard this word, octogenarian. This is your grandmama.
Yes, 80s.
Your oldest auntie, 80-year-old people out here cutting a rug in the middle of the night at somebody's house.
Exactly. So back in the day, they were not allowed to listen to American music. So what they used to do is have these rooms, and all these octogenarians were doing like, the hop, the twist. Like they did all that sort of like spinning around like American music. and then of course salsa, and then we all danced with them.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, and they were good. They were good. You wouldn't know, right? So that's the history that people used to have these sort of like hush parties. So she took and they told us the story about how they used to go to people's house and they used to listen to rock and roll and dance to rock and roll and everything
Because
else.
they were cool back in the day. They can't help it that they got old.
Exactly.
They were
And then they
us.
gave us rum, and the old guys did try it. It doesn't matter.
I mean, and some of them. Now we all had that moment where we like, you kind of old, but you can have it if you really.
Especially if they're spinning you, right?
Oh my
But
gosh.
so that to us was like the greatest part of the trip. And then we go back to our hotel. We're going to the jazz festival. And then all of a sudden, who comes out during one of the jazz numbers? These octogenarians came on the stage and started dancing for this Cuban. And we're like, those are the people we dance with. And we were like, oh, and that's what Patricia hooked us up. And then people next to us goes, what do you do? Oh, we went to this house. They're like, what kind of tour are you on?
You
Because we're
did
like on this
what?
double decker, you know, and ours was more intimate, and Patricia hooked us up. So they were like, oh, all we did was this, that, and I'm like, yeah.
Y'all didn't have the real.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I
So
love
that was
that.
my
I
favorite.
love that.
I would say that was my favorite because you just felt at home, and they didn't have that much, but they gave you what they had, you know. So somewhat
Donna
like
Bossy by any
Haitians.
means said, "Wepa, okay,
Exactly.
we're about to cut it
Yes.
up." I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That and see, that's the thing where I obviously tell people, especially if they don't travel a lot, go with your gut. If you have a funny feeling about stuff, it's okay to just be like, no. But if you feel comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
like when people take you, like you want to go on an adventure, like you want to try something cool, like, and there is again, it goes back to there is some strength in numbers there, right? So if you're like alone, and you're like, I really don't know if I'm gonna come back home. Like it may be the best night of my life, it may be the
Right.
worst. That's
Yeah.
different, but like to have some other people around you because you never know.
You never know.
Because you ain't strolling into somebody's house in the state. You're not going in Queens being like, I hear some music. I don't know these people, but I'm gonna show up in their house.
No.
I don't know. I mean, maybe if it's a friend of a friend and you know who lives there, but not
Exactly.
someplace you've never
You
been.
and also there's this joke like all Haitians know each other, so maybe it's a Haitian household. We know somebody who knows that person.
Right.
Sort of,
But there's
but
like
not on the
math
regular.
behind that.
Yeah. Yeah. Not on the regular.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. That is so dope. I did not have that experience in Cuba, but we had an amazing time.
Okay.
But I had a similar experience in Barcelona, which I was just like, I didn't really like the city. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't
No,
think people were as
no.
friendly as I would have.
I have to agree with you. It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite. Because you just felt, it was crowded, and also there were a lot. At the time I went, there was a lot of like pickpocketers and everything.
Oh,
So
they still, yeah. Las Ramblas is
yeah,
just like, don't put nothing in your pockets, y'all. Put it in your bra, up under your titty. I hate to use the term, but it needs to go up
true.
under the titty
It's
because
true.
otherwise they will take it.
It's true.
Like, but I didn't find people to be too friendly there. Although like the architecture and stuff was beautiful, and I still recommend if you've never been, go. However, I went once, and this was when I was in corporate, and we were filming a TV ad. And so our director and our producer for the TV ad took us out like locals, which is a very different thing. So to me, it's sort of like LA. LA, I love LA. It's beautiful. Love Santa Monica, love the water, all of that stuff. However, people are a little bit cliquish. So it's hard to kind of like interact with people and just be, whatever. So, but if you're in the group, you're in the group.
Yeah.
And we had one of those nights where like I was on a motorcycle at some point. I was like, you go like, I'm never gonna forget that trip. It wasn't even a vacation, y'all. It was work. It was work, y'all. And it was crazy. But we went to a building that was like, I want to say maybe like a six flat, or not a six flat, a three flat with like two sides, so 6 units.
Mm-hmm.
And older size building, and they have these in New York, like brownstone, graystone type building. They have them in Chicago, and we go in and we're like, what the hell are we doing here? We thought we were going to the club, and this lady shushes us, and there's like a little look, I want to say, you know, they got the pew, not the pew, but the altar at church, like the little thing that they move out. It was like one of those, but it was a, you know, for the entrance of like a restaurant. And I can't think of the right word, so whatever. But she's like, she need to be quiet. And she walks us upstairs. We get up to the second floor. We are legit in a regular residential building, but they have taken an apartment and they have like soundproofed it. So you have to be quiet in the hallways because everybody can hear you, but then you get inside, nobody can hear. And instead of it being like, you know, it's a long, older building. For those of you who live in cities that have like older buildings, oftentimes these brick buildings are long, right? You get in and the apartment is long. It's not square. It's like goes back.
Railroad, yeah.
Railroad, yeah, like that. So it was like bar along the short wall, like a full bar with like a mirror and all the drinks and stuff, and somebody back there working it. And then the room had like tables, like this long sort of like living room / sunroom area had multiple tables, like, you know, big wooden tables. And when I tell you they had a stage, and it was just big enough for your feet to fit on. And they had this black chick was up singing jazz, which I was like, she got to be from France because all the cool black chicks in Europe are from France, and from other places via France. But like the ones that sing, they're like all the jazz singers are French. I don't know why, but it's true. You don't hear the accent until they're like, and you're like, what? What did she just say? They'll be doing their Billie Holiday and all of that. But to your point, it was a secret, like sort of speakeasy restaurant bar kind of thing. We ate, we drank, we listened to music, and then Javier Bardem, the actor, rolls in because he was at some type of award show. He didn't have his wife with him. So he came by himself, and then there was like a band or like a guy that was like a very well-known pop singer in Spain that I didn't know who he was, but he was like very well-known. So the two of them came in and they decided to have a jam session at like 2 a.m. in this random apartment in Barcelona that's like soundproofed and has a whole bar in it. It was so bizarre. I wouldn't have gone unless I trusted the people I was with. Because it's like you go, okay, we're going to go out to dinner and then we're going to have some drinks. And then all of a sudden they're walking you into an apartment building. You're like, I've seen this movie. It was on Lifetime. I'm not going out like that.
And you're the only black person. So you know you're
right. But I will say, I'm not going to lie. In both places, in both Cuba and in Barcelona, I was with a mixed group. Right. And so there is a little something about having some white friends with you. I'm not going to lie. And that could just be my US hang up. It may not actually be a thing outside of here. But it was just sort of like, okay, if we get in trouble, y'all are going to cry and complain. Like, I'm not going to do it. Be like, Nancy, get them tears out, girl, because I ain't going down like this. But yeah, I love those types of experiences. Yes.
Fantastic.
But you know what? And so Donna said it's white privilege. But you know what? Sometimes that privilege comes in handy. If they're allies, use it.
I always do. So I was gonna say, so during the pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. I haven't been able to travel, and people know me. They're like, every 3 months I'm somewhere, right?
Right. They're like, you okay, girl?
I am itching right now. So I think that's one of the hardest things for me because, you know, like I said, I work for corporate America. So my trips, you know, to visit friends all over, you know, I've been to 40 countries and I have like a lot of friends. So all I need is a plane ticket, you know, in essence. So that was one of the hardest things, just being, you know, stuck here, you know. So, yeah, so I have to say I'm kind of like itching now. So I'm trying to plan a trip for September. But of course, all these things are, you know, it's depending on what's going on with the Delta, the Delta strain. So a friend of mine rented an Airbnb in Portugal for 2 months. He's a writer, so he's like inviting us to go. So I want to do like Portugal and of course Zurich because I used to live in Zurich. So, but you know, depends. So not sure.
But that's an awesome segue because I was going to ask you, like, you know, having been pinned up for so long, what are the places that you are itching to go? And like,
nowhere in the United States.
She said, I'm out.
I'm not. It's I'm very funny. Like, I don't feel like going around the United States is a trip for me. For me, it's always been overseas or in a different country. So I haven't really gone anywhere. I've done like trips to like upstate, you know, going, you know, just you know, to people's lake houses. But to me, those are not trips, right?
Girl, you
So
need to go down south. It's a whole different country. And I say that because
okay,
my
so
family
somebody
is
told me that, and I'm like, I'm afraid a little.
no, well, so okay, so there's the negative connotation, it's a different country, but then there's also just amazing places and culture, you know, that is along the Carolinas, that's along, you know, in I mean, New Orleans in and of itself is its
Yeah,
own
yeah,
beautiful
yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny to me. So I live in Colorado. I'm in Denver right now, and
Nice.
I got desperate because I was like, I need to go somewhere. I need to do something. And I'm like, well, at least there's mountains right here. And then I was like, oh, I don't really feel like going to the mountains.
Mountains.
And I found like I decided to go further south, and we have the nation's largest, actually the continent's largest sand dune here. And so you look in one direction and it looks like the Sahara, and you look in the next direction and it's mountains, and it's like crazy, right? And so it's interesting to me. Like I've been a few places around the country, and like you go to places like Seattle and you see Mount
Mm-hmm.
Rainier, and it's like, oh wow, like this is like Mount Fuji, right? It's Mount Fuji's cousin, because they were probably kissing cousins back in Mesopotamia times.
Exactly.
And so there's definitely some interesting things, but I feel you on that, like the mentality of, yeah, I've got this country, but it's my backyard. I really want to see something different.
Exactly. You know, so I'm always planning big trips. So right before the pandemic, I had a trip to Australia because I have friends down there. But of course, the fires happened, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right before the pandemic, the fires happened. And my friends are like, yeah, don't come down. We want you to have a good time. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then I took a short trip to South Carolina to visit friends and to do the Charleston Jazz Festival with my Cuba family. So we all met for the Jazz Festival because one of us lives down there. So he, you know, he housed all of us and everything. And then I said, you know, let me take a quick trip to Zurich, right, to visit my goddaughter. You
Quick
know,
trip.
I'll leave on a Thursday, come back on a Monday. Found seriously a flight for like $500 because it's off season. So like March is
Yeah.
like off season, $500. And then sure enough, the pandemic happened.
And you have the benefit of being in New York. I lived in New York for a while, and you can just like decide to go to Europe, and it's faster than a flight to like LA, because it's like right there.
Well, I mean, it is longer, but it's just more exciting.
Well, so when I was there, I think, so I went to Ireland from New York, and I also went to Spain from New York, and it just seemed like it was such a quick trip. Like Ireland, I think was maybe 6 hours,
6 hours. Right?
which was pretty tantamount
That's
to
pretty
an
good.
LA flight. Um, and then Spain was just like a, you know, stop over in Heathrow and then be in Spain. So I was like, this is not bad. Whereas, you know, if you're going from like LA to Tokyo is 11 hours.
That's nothing.
I
That's
mean, it's not
nothing.
horrible, but
From New York to Tokyo.
oh yeah. Well,
Hello.
so what has been your longest flight? Like, what's been the place that you had to go the furthest in the air?
I would say Beijing.
Ooh.
Yeah, Beijing or Uganda, right? So
Mm.
yeah, Uganda. I have a friend down there. So people are like, "You're going to Uganda?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have a friend down there who's part Norwegian and part Ugandan, and he was raised in Norway. However, he came back home to, I guess, have a hospital, right? He was creating a hospital, and for years he kept saying, "When are you coming? When are you coming?" I'm like, "I'm coming," and then finally, I think in 2018, he's like, "I'm sending you a ticket." It was the best trip, one of the best trips, because it's somebody who's there, you know, like somebody who's taking you all around, and it was great. It was absolutely great. His family was good, and yeah, and I've been wanting to go back ever since. It's great. It's
Wow.
fantastic. It's
So
fantastic.
what's dope about Uganda? Because again, this, I feel like this is one of those places that people, it's at least in the States, it's like there's little children with flies that we're just giving them protein oatmeal to make them live, and they have little bellies, and we feel sad for them.
Mm-mm.
Tell us about what's dope about Uganda.
I think, especially in the capital, it's just like any other tourist place. And in fact, there were a lot of white folks down there. And
Well,
what my friend told me, it's because there's a lot of European countries who have like medical programs. So
mm,
they send their doctors here. But there's a nightlife, there's restaurants. I'm saying in the capital. However, when you go out, beaches, beautiful people.
mm.
Yeah, I mean, it is a third world country. However, I would say it's more developed than Haiti, right? I think it's because the Chinese are down there and they get all the like road contract. Oh, the Chinese they own half of Uganda, like
Oh, at half of the continent. Let's be
half of
honest.
the continent. So the roads are better. A lot of things have been. You can tell they've invested in the country. However,
Hmm.
yes, there's poverty. Once you leave the main city, the capital, and we went further out, it is kind of sad. But it's for me. I come from Haiti, so it's not. It wouldn't be. It wasn't a shock to me, but I can
Yeah,
imagine
yeah.
maybe to others it was. But I guess the best place was the food. The food. The food was great. I mean, you
Was
get a plate
was it
this
familiar or was it like
wow.
really different but really good?
I think it was familiar. Just a lot of starch though. So
I ain't mad at the carbs. I ain't gonna lie, I ain't
I
mad at the
mean,
carbs.
you have rice, plantains, potato, yuca. Like no, it's all in one plate. Like and then the fish. So it was just a lot of food for no money. For like nothing. So it's a place where your money stretches very, very far. Very far.
Ooh. And
But
what kind of
again,
place did you stay?
what kind of food?
Like what kind of place did you stay in?
Oh, I stayed at my friend's place.
Okay, so
Like,
tell us about your friend's
like
place. What's your friend place like? I mean, he a
he has
doctor in
an apartment
Uganda.
there. He has an apartment, and the thing is, he's been living there for so long. He knew everybody. So we went to like clubs, but you would see there's a lot of like UN people down there, a lot of white folks down there. I have to say a lot of white, and they love it down there, as you can imagine. And yeah, I mean, just like any other place, right? They take advantage of the locals, right? So you always see like these like older white men going for these like younger Ugandan young ladies, and it's a little uncomfortable.
I
So,
mean, but I mean, if the girls got game, I never take
exactly.
away any woman's agency.
Yeah,
But that being said, you also don't want to see a situation where people are subjugated into
yeah.
behaviors that they wouldn't,
Mhm.
normally.
No, but we went, salsa dancing. We went to see live bands. It was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. And it's so funny, like my friend who's half Norwegian, he met some Norwegian people, and then so we started hanging out with them. But a lot of UN people, a lot of missions, like medical missions, they send like doctors to get their residency and specialization. So you saw all types. So.
Wow. So, I mean, it sounds like while somewhat colonized, to be fair, it's also a melting pot, right? Because it's not just the traditional sense of, okay, so these are Europeans, like white Europeans coming down and like colonizing the space. You've got Asians, you've got basically professionals from all of these countries.
Indians, there's a large Indian population, of course.
Mm,
They came, well, they were there before, and a lot of them had to leave, with Idi Amin kind of kicking all the Indians out. But a lot of them came back, or a lot of them stayed because they didn't want to give up their property. So there are a lot of Indians down there. Mm-hmm.
and that sounds like a pretty like culturally diverse and interesting city, like, or country to go to.
It is. I
Fun.
loved it there. But again, I had somebody who knew everything, right? So, and yes, I was on one of those little like mopeds because he was like, we can't take the car, but traffic
Not with
wise,
that traffic, no.
right. I was dying all the time. I just kept my eyes closed. Like It's crazy.
That's me. That's me in the Caribbean. Like,
I'm
I
not
will take a Benadryl and let somebody else drive, so I don't have to even be
But
aware
not
of what we've gone through.
motorcycle, right? You're not on that. Those little.
No, no, no. I'm talking in a car. I'm talking in a
Oh
car.
no, car is fine. But were you ever on these little, scooters?
No, because I like my legs too much and my arms, and I'm floppy. I don't want to. They drive too fast in
And
too small
imagine,
spaces.
I'm very tall, so I'm trying to be compact.
You try to be as small as you can. Oh my gosh.
I'm telling you, I close
Wow.
my eyes. There's sometimes I'm like, we're going in the car. I don't care about traffic. Like, I need to be at peace.
So this brings me to, what is the local alcohol, and how much of that can you drink and be a passenger on somebody's motorcycle?
Oh, in fact, I have some of the local. I have alcohol from everywhere. It's strong. I couldn't take it straight. I had to always liquid, made it a little weaker with like tonic water or seltzer. But most Ugandans just throw it back. Costs nothing.
What? So is it like a white liquor, like a vodka?
White
Is
liquor.
it more a rum?
A white liquor. I wouldn't say it's a rum because it's not sweet. So I would definitely say it's kind of like a gin. Like
Oh,
yeah.
So you got like some herbs and some.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like good gin. I mean, make some Negronis.
So that's why I would put it with tonic, but they just put ice and they're good.
They just throw it back. Oh
yeah.
my Lord.
But then we went clubbing as well. It was just great, So
what's the music scene like?
They love a lot of Caribbean music, a lot of reggae for sure. Reggaeton was huge there.
I mean, it makes you move. Like,
yeah, and then, typical Ugandan music, which I learned to love. I went to see one of the most famous bands, live, and they were fantastic. They were great, And I looked them up there on iTunes, and it's funny how all the cultures, it's like Haitian music, but a little bit more upbeat. So, and you don't even need to understand the language. No. It's just, you're in, you're in. Yeah. So
one of my now new secrets to focusing while I'm doing business stuff, or like when I need to read, and because I'm the first person to fall asleep. Like if I listen to a podcast, I'll fall asleep. It's just too relaxing. I can't,
I listen to podcasts while I'm working. Because that.
Yeah. Well, even that, like, it makes me, I don't know, unless it's like work related, it just makes, I'm like, oh, they're it's like listening to NPR, they all kind of whisper just a little bit. Mm-hmm. But in any case, then when I turn on music I like, then I'm sitting there and I'm singing and I'm dancing with it and I'm not getting anything done. So what I've done is switch to K-pop because I can't understand the words, but the beats are on point. I had no idea, y'all. Didn't nobody tell me how dope K-pop is. I'm like,
oh, you're a 15-year-old girl now.
Girl, but I ain't mad at it. Look, between K-pop and I think I was on a flight to, I want to say it was maybe Kenya, where I got exposed to all the Twilight movies because they were free and it was a really long flight. Yeah. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I am a 16-year-old girl. I'm almost 40, but I'm here for it.
They love, it's just all the rage. Now I see it and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's like hip hop, but yeah. No,
I would say to me, it was like top 40s hip hop from the late 90s and early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And these dudes, but they make, and it's not all the same. Like if you listen to, I have Tidal because, I'm voting for everybody black. I know they sold it, but still, we need to make sure we still, but it's one of those things that I was listening to it and it was it had the beats, it had the rhythm. And I was like, you know what, y'all pull it off and y'all appreciate the culture. So,
do they appreciate it or just,
Well, so it's interesting and we could get into that too because I think
it's not organic, right? The producers know what hits they've done this,
it's not organic here though either. Let's be honest.
No, it's not organic.
Yeah, it's not organic anywhere. Exactly. I won't say I used to hate on Britney Spears, but I used to be like, that girl can't sing until I actually heard her Like it was a video of her like at 11 years old singing in church. And I was like, they took that and turned it into this. So that's where I also take it with a grain of salt. But I'm like, it does take, you know, I mean, they got some skills. They got the little dance moves down. And I was like, you know, y'all out here doing your thing. But I guess the really obfuscated point that I was making was like music can be really universal, and it's like people are like, oh, I don't understand what they're saying. Just enjoy it. All you need is the beats. All you need is the beats, whether it's slow, whether it's fast. I was in Croatia in Dubrovnik at an Irish pub where a guy was like playing acoustic guitar, and it was so good. It was so good and so random.
So were a lot of your travels for work? Like you happen to be there?
No, that was getting the hell away from work. Croatia was getting the hell away from work.
Okay.
I think I've only taken 2 or 3 international trips for work. And everything else has been me trying to get the heck up out of the country and see the world. I was a Nat Geo kid. What's that?
You went to Croatia by yourself?
No, I went with my friend from work.
Okay.
It was the 2 of us. And it was, you know, it was one of those things. Most of my trips have been with like one other person. I've done a couple by myself or like semi by myself. Like for instance, my friend got married in the Philippines. And so I took the trip out there, but like solo, and I didn't know anybody except her and her husband. But I stopped over in South Korea and like visited friends from business school. You know, I wish I need to go back because it was so dope, and I was only there for a short amount of time. But yeah,
Vietnam is on, like for me, it's Vietnam to go.
I want to go, and I heard, but this is why I'm doing keto now. I'm over here with my light wine spritzer because they make suits and stuff for you, and I really want like a bad boss bitch suit because the whole thing is they have like basically like the fashion district in New York, but they're doing custom stuff, and it's super super cheap. So like
very cheap.
Oh my God!
I in Thailand, and they turn it around quick.
They measure you one day, and you got a custom suit. So I want to do Vietnam. I want to do Thailand. I want to do Cambodia because I just like their food. At least I like their food in the States. I don't know if I like Cambodian food in Cambodia, but
yeah, but no, you're right. Like those countries. I mean, when I went to Thailand, I came off with a couple of suits. I mean, one day. And they got it so exact. So by the time I went to pick it up, they only had to do a couple of things. That's how they just know already, you know, like how to put it together. So I do agree, like Vietnam, from what I hear. So that's definitely
and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I love going to places. And tell me if you got any of this from Cuba. But like, I like going to places that have American history there. Right? Because I know what I've been told, and then I kind of like getting the Barbara Walters 2020 special on it when I get there. I'm like, so what really happened, you know? And
well, I wouldn't say so much with Cuba, because Cuba I was a little bit more aware because Haiti and Cuba are so close, and we have history, so I understood how it really was as opposed. But now Vietnam, the reason why I want to go is because of the Vietnam War and everything that had transpired. So I was reading these books, and I'm like you said, the history. I want to see, you know, where all of this happened, and you know, it's just, I think it's something very important for us to at least see history. And I think if we go to Vietnam, we could just see what had transpired. There's still people down there that will tell you how it was.
It wasn't that long ago, right? Like it's a generation maybe back. So there's the memory is still there. It's like going to South Africa where you're like, oh, you were a whole adult when this was going down. And I'm having a conversation with you, and you're not so much older than me that I feel like, you know, oh, that was a long time ago. It's like, oh.
No. South Africa is so close. Like when I went, it was too much for me. Like it was just very, very emotional because it's just so close, you know. You talk to people and they will tell you exactly, you know. So I went because my cousin married a South African, and she had her wedding down there.
Isn't it gorgeous?
It is phenomenal. So now her parents, her in-laws, that is, still live down there. She's now here, but when they come to New York, they stay here, and they're like, I have a place now in South Africa. But they tell stories about how things were, and it's hard. It's hard, because it's just so close, Yeah.
And and but I think that's also fascinating too. And like even going to countries where race isn't necessarily the nexus of whatever the cultural friction was, can be, it's just fascinating to see things that are, I guess, considered historical. I mean, we look
Yeah.
at like the Bosnian and Herzegovinian wars in the 90s, right? And look, Cranberries, y'all can make fun of my sense of music, but I love the Cranberries. Dolores Riordan, like, rest in peace. Hope Jesus got you in his arms. Um, they all they did was like holler and cry about Bosnia and all these things going on. And then you go and drive into Bosnia and you go to places like Mostar, where one side of it's a city that's split by a river and a bridge. And one side of the city was Christian and one side of the city was Muslim. And they were blowing each other to smithereens 25 years ago, which wasn't that long ago. And it's crazy to go into a place and see it heal after that, to see people like crazy. It's little things like you're shopping. Everybody has like little shops, right? Like, no matter where you go, there's going to be somebody on the street selling you some little tchotchke. We're not made in China, not to be funny, because it was made out of the shells. Like, and I'm talking, I've never seen like military ammunitions, like munition shells that are like the size of a shoebox, right? Like tall, and then little tiny ones. And they've taken them and they've like etched art into them, and they're gorgeous. Girl, I would have bought them, but I was like, I ain't trying to mess with TSA like that. They already get mad over toenail clippers. I'm not really trying to be that person. But it's beautiful to see the art, the beauty that comes out of the pain, that rises out of the ash of whatever that.
Serbia in particular, because I have a Serbian friend, and she promised to take me. The funny thing is, I have a Serbian friend and I have a Croatian friend. And they both live in Switzerland, in Zurich. They actually left because of the war, right? So they were refugees coming into Switzerland, and they were raised there. And it's so funny how that generation, there's no issues, but when you talk to their parents,
oh yeah, it's a wrap.
It's there's still some deep-seated issues there, right? So.
And the funny thing is now this is where it gets a little interesting for me as a Midwestern American that grew up with very generic history lessons, right? Because it's like, especially in the States, it's very like white people are white, black people are black, and they've erased culture from both sides, which I don't think we talk about a lot. But culture has really been erased from both sides, because if you look at places like, the Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia, all these places that were formerly a part of the Ottoman Empire and all of that, these were ethnic groups of people. And it's like, there's a reason why their grandparents are still mad. Not because somebody's white or black, but because they had very different, ethnicity actually is a thing in Europe.
It's a thing. Yeah,
it's a real thing, which is real, because you go, oh, but you're all in the same country. Yeah, but it's like being Southern and being like, calling Northerners Yankees. Right? Yeah. There's that animosity is going to be there. It doesn't matter where it came from. It comes from that cultural separation, which I think just makes for great food.
South Africa, there's like white, there's black, and then there's color, right?
Yeah.
So you are categorized as black is if you belong to a tribe. So I was called colored because I don't belong to a tribe. I'm American, so on and so forth, right? We would be, but if you're part of a tribe, that's when they consider you black.
Yeah.
And it was funny because my cousin's husband came here. We had a football. He said colored the whole, how like the record scratch.
Yeah. But he said it with a U though, so it's okay, right?
Yeah. They're like, and one of my friends go, my man, I know he knew.
We don't say that here.
But now he knows. But it was so funny. But I had to learn about it because he actually would be considered colored, like because he's like Indian, but like one of the like from natives, like the native, like you know how we have Native
Yeah.
Americans. So there's native South Africans. So his dad is always saying the blacks, the blacks, the blacks, and I'm like, and I had to readjust when he says the blacks. It's like, no,
There's
you're
so much xenophobia down there. And it has to do, like, it's like a, you know, oh, but you came over from Zambia, you're black. And it's
exactly.
because they don't use it in the same vernacular that we do.
So every
Yeah.
time he's talking, and I'm like, not okay. But I'm usually like, I got it, I think. So,
John said he lived in Germany and the Polish were the butt of all the jokes like Mexicans. Honestly, I'm from Chicago. The Polish were all the butt of the jokes in Chicago too.
at one point in New York as well. It's true.
And it's interesting. Like, I guess if you, I hate to say if you've been around long enough, but I remember the 80s. I remember the 80s well. And it was Irish and Polish were not necessarily white, but they didn't like everybody else. So it was a very interesting, Chicago historically is a very segregated city. So it's not like New York where people like kind of like people did not mix until I would say the 90s.
Were you raised in Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so to me, I have very distinct memories about the Polish areas and how other people, not just the black people, but other people, other ethnicities were not like welcome in those areas. And it wasn't just Polish people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dogging on Polish people, but that was like the temperature of Chicago. It was like, this is the Polish part. This is the Jewish part. That's the black part. That's the Mexican part. This is the, you know, whatever, Andersonville with all the Norwegian people, which I don't think the Norwegian people were beating anybody up, but I don't really know. I never hung out there until I was an adult. And then I was up there getting pannekuchen all the time because, oh my God, they will F up a pancake in the best way, I tell you. Woo!
Food is very important to you.
Look, every place I associate with the food. But yeah, so it's interesting to me, this concept of ethnicity, and I think it's really beautiful, again, for people of color, particularly in the States, to get out to places that have ethnic roots.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things when you said going down south. So now, because I don't know if I can fly out, I was talking to a couple of people who are from down south, like Montgomery, Alabama, Mississippi. I'm mentoring some kids, and I'm like, they tell me how sometimes some towns are stuck in the past, right? Like what they grew up with. And for me, I'm Haitian, so I don't know a lot about, like, I had to learn African American, culture as an adult, because in school they're not gonna teach you anything, right?
No.
So for me, just learning about slavery, like slavery and how some people are able to trace back their roots. So when I was in Charleston, I met somebody who's like, oh yeah, I can tell you exactly who my great-grandfather was. To me, I think that's fascinating, And so I think, like you said, there is ethnicity, because I do feel like the South, there's something different about it, right? And I'm just curious, because I don't know that, I guess because I'm a Northeasterner, right? And also I'm kind of afraid of the South, because I hear, Confederate flags are flying everywhere.
Look, I know why. I have my moments. I definitely have my moments, and it's an interesting thing, because you almost have to be. It's just like going to a foreign country. You have to kind of be with somebody that lives down there to know what's where and what is okay. I mean, we have a history of like Green Book and all of that stuff, but that being said, like, there's some really dope places, and there are definitely some places like you walk in the diner and you're like, I walked into the wrong diner. I'm just going, I'm gonna grab a pie because I'm hungry and I'm out.
That's the thing that's kind of scares me a little bit, because just from what the mentees that I have, they're like, no, like, it's pretty bad, like how they had to grow up, being called, easily, like it was not a deal, so.
And New York is a very different place. Like, I moved from Chicago after college, after I graduated from college. 2 weeks later, I was on the East Coast. I stayed in Baltimore, lived in Delaware, and then I lived in New York for a bit. And it was like a breath of fresh air to be in a place that wasn't segregated. Like I could go to the grocery store and not tell what kind of neighborhood I was in
Yep.
because everybody was there. Like I was
Yep.
like, I couldn't tell the ethnicity of the neighborhood
Yeah.
surrounding it. And to me, that was really nice. And then I came back, came back west, and I was like, oh my God, this is so oppressive. And even here in Colorado, it's a very interesting space to be in, but it's funny because somewhere in between, I found this audacity to be in spaces that people don't necessarily want me in or I'm not supposed to be in. And I found joy in those spaces. And I found the beauty of the place. And there's still good people everywhere. Like, and so there's something kind of nice about finding those. I hate to put them as diamonds in the rough. I'm not trying to put myself in harm's way, but there's definitely some really interesting places. Even going, you know, so Maryland, south of the Mason-Dixon, along the East Coast. I lived in Wilmington, Delaware. I would go to Elkton, Maryland to go to Walmart because it was a 24-hour Walmart and it was like 20 minutes from my house or whatever. Until I found out it was like one of the largest Ku Klux Klan areas in Maryland. I had no idea. I knew people were looking at me crazy, but I was also at Walmart at like 2 a.m. So I was like, I get it.
But that's even worse. You're out there by yourself.
And I was like, I mean, after I figured that out, I was like, okay, I should probably go during like normal business hours or go to like a regular Walmart.
Did you see any though?
No, I mean, to me, so I was used to being in a space of being stared at and suspect like anytime I went into stores. So it felt a little different than other places I have been in that area, but didn't feel no different than the Midwest to me. Okay. At all. And I'm bright. I'm like, you would think, not to be funny, but I'm like, you know, people be like, well, you got this, you got that privilege. And I'm like, I agree. I do agree. But let's be really clear. When I go into any room, people know I'm not one of them.
Of course.
Like, whether I'm more respectable, that's a different thing. And I completely get it. And my life is not threatened nearly as much as darker skinned people. I totally get that. I agree. But they be funky. And they want to test you. And so you do get those, like, somebody will stop and stare and eye roll you the whole way down the aisle and all that. I was used to that from the Midwest. Okay. Now, I didn't realize that was completely out of sorts for the East Coast. And then they were like, oh, you know, it's like a Klan thing. And I was like, oh. Okay, this makes sense to me now.
Yeah, so that's the only thing. If I can't fly out, I may do like a southern, I don't know. I have to work up the nerve.
You know, but there's always some good places. And it's just like when you're going to a country that you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so you said, I'm in Cuba. They took us to this sketchy ass neighborhood. But since I was with somebody who knew where we were going, it's the same idea. It's the same idea. I love, like I said, I love Louisiana. I love parts of Mississippi. I've never gotten used to Alabama yet. I just haven't. It's just not, it's not my thing. I don't know. There's a lot of ranch houses and I'm just like, can y'all put some stairs in here? Just a little bit of stairs. I just need to get a booty workout, just a little bit. But there's some amazing things. One of the things I always wanted to do was kind of go to like the Geechee Gullah areas of the Carolinas. I've never done that. And I'm like, again, I'm in it for the food, but like,
yes. Yeah, that's something I'm interested in as well, you know.
Donna said, I have no desire to go down south. I lived in Mississippi for a little bit, and it's a mix. Like, I have things that I love, and there's things I don't love.
I'm going to say I'm nervous about, I mean, I just feel like I have to experience once. Now, I went to South, but I went to Charleston, right? So Charleston is not good. However, we went outside of it, and you see the disparity between Charleston, like King Street versus everyone else. And I'm just, it's backwards. It's where people live, how people live. And I'm like, it's so, it's disheartening. And you're like, this is United States. Mm-hmm. So when people say United States is the best, okay.
No, it's, well, yeah.
We've got work to do.
But we also live in a country that, you know, insofar as people were really upset about the coastal elites and talking about the Democratic Party and how they weren't wrong. They
Yeah.
had some other things. They had other hangups. They had some other hangups that I don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
But oh, John, you live in Brandon. Okay, cool. I know Jackson very well, and I have family down in Greenville, and in Philadelphia as well, Mississippi, not Philadelphia
Okay.
City. We're not that cool. It's not West Philadelphia.
You know people in Jackson?
Jackson. There is a spot every time I go into Jackson, because you fly into Jackson to get to Philadelphia. There is a spot that I go for catfish, every time I go. And it is always full of white people that just stop and stare, because they'll just see, because it'd be like me and like my 90-year-old aunt and like my little cousin or somebody. And we're like the only black people that walk in. And I'm like, unless you're going to touch me, I'm getting this catfish. I'm sorry. We just got to do it. We just got to do it. Look, I have taken so many life-altering risks just for food. I can't even tell you. Some people like to, skydive. I like to eat. I love it. I love it.
I don't know if you'll get it in Denver or Colorado, but Haitian food is the best. And I'm biased, however.
Not here, but it is good. I haven't had a lot of Haitian food.
Oh, if you had Dominican food,
yeah,
Puerto Rican food, although ours is a lot spicier, and then there's a little bit, there's some recipes as a little bit French influence, but Haitian food is the best. I'm biased though,
so because we've been on for an hour and I could talk to you all day. So one, I think we need to like go down south. We should just have a trip down south, and like we should take wine down on the road and go down south. She said, y'all eat a lot of pork. I do eat a lot of pork. I ain't gonna lie.
I do.
It's the other white meat. I bless my food before I eat it. It's good.
We can
but tell us, like, so if we were like, okay, this weekend we're gonna see if we have Haitian places in our respective cities, because like we got somebody in LA, we got folks in New York, we got folks from all over that have popped in. What are some of like the must-have like Haitian meals? Like, do y'all have your own version of roti? Like, or what is it? Or is it more French inspired?
It's
and
more
like
French inspired. So we don't use any curry, roti, or any of that. I would say pork is number one. So we have this thing called Guillaume, which is pork cubes that we roast in the oven.
Is it like pork belly?
No. It's like a pork shoulder.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But the best thing, which is very rare to find because sometimes it's hard to find here in New York, is conch. Okay, now the way we make conch in a particular sauce, conch is it. Like conch is what we do very, very well. Really? And then we have this called we have rice and beans, right? But we're the only ones that have what we call black rice.
Ooh.
And black rice, we call it jouy avec John, is made of, what they do is you take mushrooms and it gets dried out. It's like leaves, like the mushrooms become leaves. You soak the leaves into water. You drain the leaves so the water's black.
Yeah.
You cook the rice with that, the flavor, and then you add shrimp and peas, like that black. Every one of my non-Haitian friends are like, "You making the black rice?"
That's basically risotto. Like, I'm here for that. Yeah. Risotto is like, I mean, just you have a green, but like, mushroom risotto is basically.
No, we don't put any mushrooms.
It's the mushroom juice.
So the leaves. So you have to go to a Haitian store to get the leaves, and it's literally, and then you just soak it in water. You boil, and you use that water to cook the rice.
Ooh.
The flavor. Every time I have a party, I have to make the black rice. You know what I mean? And some people put shrimp in it. I put shrimp and also you put peas. Just peas. No.
Now, are you like the little green peas, the gunga peas? Yeah. Or no? I'm thinking the Jamaican. I don't know what the equivalent is. Haiti.
Like
the little pigeon peas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. Or you could put lima beans, but yeah, the black rice is it like. So whenever I go to Haiti, I always go and get like a mass amount of John, the dried mushrooms, because when you go to a Haitian store, it's like a lot of money. So I come back with which costs nothing, and I always have. So yeah.
Okay, so clearly we need to be friends, because A, you cook, and 2, you know where all the good food is.
I do.
This has been so much fun. You have to promise me to come back because we had such a great time.
I definitely will, and we definitely, and I am very open to that, going down south. So if you are planning to go, I would like to get my nerve up and go, because
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And it's, if nothing else, I channel my inner caucasity and I just show up in places.
I can do that too. I work in corporate America.
Yes. Yes, I'm sorry. Is there a problem? Okay, thank you. I'll take my drink now. But then you got to watch people when they bring you your food. I'm not saying people are dirty. I'm just saying I heard some things. I just heard some stories. This has been so much fun.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I want to do it again for sure.
Yes. So you and I will connect offline. This has been so dope. And the messages have been flying. They're talking about food. They're talking about peas. They're talking about pork. I'm here for all of that. I love all of y'all for joining us. I love you, girl, for joining us. Tell everybody. I know you're not. Actually, I don't know if you're any of your business is like on social media, but tell folks where we can find you, where we can see your travels when you make it out to Zurich and you're kicking it and stuff. Like, where can we find you on the interwebs?
Oh, all of my travels, I'm still kind of old school, is on Facebook. So there's albums. There's albums of my travels all over. So yeah, I can't do the Insta. There's too much going on. So,
you know what? If it makes you feel any better, when I first got on Instagram, I was not a first adopter. It took me a while to get on. And I started using it because it had the filters. And I was taking pictures of food. So for those of y'all who know me in the comments,
it all goes back to food.
It all goes back to food. So I had started this little Insta called the Tasty Muse, and it was just me taking food porn pictures. And I thought Instagram was just to use as filters. I did not realize it was public. So people at work, this is when I was in corporate, they were like, so you had lamb chops, like you made lamb chops Tuesday night and you didn't invite me over? And I'm like, what in the creepy? I just didn't know.
I wasn't going to get on Instagram, but the only thing is that I follow people, jazz musicians. That's pretty much it. Because I'm a jazz head, so I just follow people.
Okay, so then the last question I have for you, the last, I promise. Where is your favorite place to go for jazz music in the world? Because I know there's jazz festivals everywhere.
For sure. New York. New York, before the pandemic, I used to go see like three shows a week, right?
Wow.
I would say a lot of people come to New York for Blue Note, right? Which is great, and they bring all the big stars, but the Jazz Standard was the best in terms of like the bigger, and then you had like these sort of speakeasy jazz clubs,
yes,
where it's like literally this small. It's called Smalls. So, it's called Smalls.
It's easy to remember.
Yeah.
It's easy to remember.
It's this small, and the jam sessions are the best. So after midnight, like musicians come from their gigs, right? So they have like their gigs at 8 and 10 p.m. They come to the jam sessions to eat, to drink, and they just buy, and you're just sitting there and just watching improv. To me, that's the best. So like after 11, they all come in, and yeah, and it's like free, because if you're there at 1 a.m. and everything, and they are jamming, like they're still hyped from their previous performance, and they see their buds, and they're like, let's do this. And it's the best. So.
Oh my God, I love that. Cassandra, I'm going to be hitting you up. One, because I used to, I don't want to say I used to stay in New York, but I would go at least 2 or 3 times a year to New York and 2 or 3 times to San Francisco, because they're places I love to visit, but they're too damn expensive to live in. But I lived up in White Plains for a while, so I had some space. I wasn't too far. But yes, this has been so much fun.
Likewise.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
You have blessed us.
And I'm happy that we connected, and I will do this again for sure.
Yes. And we're going down south, so y'all keep us honest. Somebody hit me up in the DMs and be like, "Did y'all go down south yet?" Because we need to do that.
Do whatever social media. Thank you.
Do you, girl?
But look, Facebook is what I got. That's all.
Well, But you're here. You did a live on Instagram. Look at you. You're advanced.
I know, it's my first.
You're advanced. You're advanced, girl. I love it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
Thank you, everybody
Thank you
that joined us. Hopefully, and I say this every week, but I really, really do hope that this brought some love and some light and some fun, that you forgot about at least 4 things that pissed you off this week, and you just had a moment to kick it and feel like you were kicking it with some friends. Wherever you guys are, I wish you the best. I wish you all the blessings. I hope the rest of your week is fire in the best way. It's all downhill from here, y'all. And we're rolling into the weekend. So I love you guys for coming. Cassandra, thank you so much for coming. We're going to definitely kick it again, too.
Of course.
I love it. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. Bye.